Hello and welcome to Watching Code Office Hours. This is session number 79. Real quick, the purpose of this is to help Watching Code students. So if you're going through any of the lessons on watchingcode.com and you're stuck with anything, this is a place where you can just ask me directly, and I can help you get through whatever issues you're having. The main thing here is that when you're working alone through a course by yourself online, it can be really hard when you get stuck. And when that happens, people then they quit and stuff like that. So I just want to give you a way to make sure that if you need help, then you can get it. And that's about it. So the format is just a couple announcements before we jump in, and then I'll just answer questions one-on-one from the students. And so if you do have a question, you'll want to call into the video chat. Um, and I'll be specific about how you can do that in 1 second. The first thing is make sure you join the Facebook group to get information about upcoming sessions and other announcements. I almost never send emails, and so if you want to get the information about new things and changes and that kind of stuff, you'll want to join the Facebook group, as well as in case there's a schedule change with office hours. So you want to join that Facebook group right here. And the link to this document, if you're on the YouTube live stream, it's in the YouTube video description. Right below the video, you'll get a link to this document. Second, like I said, if you want to ask a question, you want to call into the video chat. I will try to look at questions that pop up elsewhere, but no guarantees. So if you do have a question, you'll want to make sure you call in, and the link is right here. Just click on that. Real quick, some notes about new stuff. So I released two new videos for a new series that we're doing on a library called Underscore. And the approach in this new series is a little bit different than what you've seen in the past from me. I think in the past, usually what you'd expect from, at least if you're in the premium membership, typically I go straight into the code and just dive right in, just talk programming right away. And this one, I try to kind of set the context for why we're doing what we're doing, like why we're looking at Underscore right now, how it fits into the curriculum so far, and I also kind of talk about the underlying philosophy that drives the curriculum and the decisions that I've made. And so the first one kind of shows you the first video I released last week explains kind of my view and perspective on what makes someone actually good at programming. It's something that it's a question not many people have tackled really. I think most of the time the discussion is centered around what you know rather than um, a real discussion of like what makes someone substantively better. If we're not going to discuss just A, B, C, check things off a checklist kind of thing. And so that's kind of important. It's important to understand like what watching code is and what the goals are if you're a student. That is really relevant to understand. And then in the second video, I kind of contrast it with the way the average person views things and the way the industry views things as a whole. And I talk about that more to just to show you how different it is, and that the popular view and for many of you what you expect to see from a tutorial site, it's not what you're going to see here. And I kind of explain the difference. And so these two videos are of kind of different flavor from what you've seen so far. So, and I think the emphasis here is just to give as much importance to why things are being done, and give that as much importance as I give to the code and explaining technical concepts. So if you are a subscriber and you're not up to date with all the videos, typically I would discourage you from watching them, and I would just tell you to wait until you get to that point. But if you're a premium subscriber and you're even if you just signed up, you could still watch those two latest videos in the Underscore series, and they would still make sense. So that's kind of if you are in that position, take a look at that and let me know what you think. So that's the those are all the announcements I had. From here, we'll just go into open questions, and we'll start with Erica.
No, I don't have any questions today. I actually just came to observe. I haven't been here in a while, so wanted to check back in.
Okay, where are you at with the content right now?
I am circling back to the testings. I believe it was video 4 for each and optional this.
I see. Got
I
it.
think I got a little discouraged when I started it. I was just having complications with understanding bind and this, and I needed to go back to practical JavaScript. And that made a little bit more sense about the this um, keyword, but I needed to get a refresher basically because it was getting a little too frustrating and I needed to step back.
Okay. Was there anything that is still difficult around those concepts like this and bind, the different things
Um,
you just mentioned?
bind is still a little confusing to me, but I understand this now better. So that was important. Um, and other than that, no, I mean, I think I'm gonna reread all of the bind and this cheat sheet that you had listed out and try to work from there. And then if that doesn't work, come up with better questions than just saying I don't really understand because I think I need to hone in on what I don't specifically understand and then
Okay.
ask.
Well, if you want to, we can take a look at that more in depth too, if you'd like, because if it's a more conceptual problem, then like Vincent said, he was confused as
Yeah,
well. Then we could take a look at that.
that would be helpful.
Okay. Um, how should we do this? I guess Erica, what could you, I guess, try to describe like where like maybe if there is a line of code that's confusing, but you're not sure exactly what is confusing about it, I could, we could just kind of dissect it together. Would that work? Or do you have another suggestion?
I don't. Vincent, do you have any ideas specifically? I really think it's just conceptual about like
Hmm.
how bind itself works. Like, um,
Yeah, give me a second to screenshot a part of the video. I'll get back to you guys.
okay,
Okay. Um, let me try, let me get some code onto the screen, and then we'll have something that we can look at and poke around with.
okay, that would be cool.
Um, so do you see my console?
I do.
All right, so let's say, well, first we always have to start with a function. Let me clear this out so we get a fresh slate. Um, let's start with a function, and bind is related to this. So we want to have a function that uses this in some way. So I'll just call this Erica, and we can like this, and we can return this as well. So if we want to save it to a variable or something, or just look at it in, I guess we can just return this, and that's fine. We don't need to console log it. So if we run Erica now, this is window. So that's case one. And then let's say that you, wait, first of all, does what I did just now make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So say that you wanted to, let me pull up the cheat sheet. I'm trying to think of a good example. So we basically just did the case one. Yeah, I guess this example is okay. So by default, Erica will return window because that's case 1, right? But if we want to override it, say we want to use case 4 to override it, and we want the function to return an empty object. So how would you do that using bind? Well, we could take the function and call the bind method. And how does the bind method work? Like, what goes into the arguments list?
Um,
Let's say we want to bind it to an actual Erica object. And just, it'll be really simple. Name. So we want to bind the Erica function to the Erica object, so that when we run this function, instead of returning window, it will return Erica object.
so do we enter the variable?
Yep. And okay, so what will happen? Like, what does this highlighted section return?
So this becomes name Erica, right? When we,
Well, this becomes this object.
that's what I mean. Yeah, it becomes what's inside of that object.
Mm-hmm. But what does this function call return? Like if I set this equal to a variable, or this return. Can you help me name this variable better?
I wish I could. I think I'm a little confused. I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay. So I'll pretend that I don't know either, and we'll use the cheat sheet to help us. So in case 4, I didn't use words to explain what's happening. I just used examples.
Right.
And so if you look at, so for example, explicitly set log this is very similar to what does this return, right?
Yeah,
Can you see it? Can you see the structure is the same? So this example is going to be very instructive. Instead of creating an object named Gordon object, because I created a variable called Erica object instead of just passing it in directly, or like passing it in kind of inline, right? So I just kind of skipped a step here, but so after I call this part, it returns a value, and that value becomes explicitly log this. And then later on, when you run explicitly log this, the comment is saying it's going to console log the Gordon object. So that's what's happening. Do you have any questions about like what has happened so far?
Like, what is bind's purpose? I guess I don't see.
Mm-hmm. So it takes, right. So it takes your original function, in this case log this,
right,
and it will return a copy of the function where this is set to whatever is passed into bind.
So I'm changing the value of this.
Right.
Okay.
So it lets you override this and set it to something you decide, rather than, remember, if you call the function that I've highlighted right now, it would just return or log window.
Right.
And
okay.
so if you want to change that behavior, then you could do this, and you basically change it from window to this highlighted section.
So why would I want to bind something like that? Like, why would I want to change the this value?
Mm-hmm. So there's an example from practical JavaScript. In practical JavaScript, there's a for each. So let me so it's almost like a question of why. Remember in, let's say you had let me pull up the practical JavaScript code. Glitch. You remember what it was called? Let me try to find the name.
Sure.
So there's an example in practical JavaScript, and there's also an example in TMVC jQuery as well.
Oh, I think Vincent just sent that.
Oh, did Vincent just send it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull up his image inside of the screen. That's not the same. Line 51, do you mean 52?
Say again.
Are you let's hold off on what Vincent is showing.
Okay.
Let's come back to that, as it's a little different. Okay, let me go back and try to pull the example from practical JavaScript. It's from the destroy all for loops.
Gordon, what about the video that you made that was specifically about this? That's in the sections? That was a really helpful video, and you really broke things down.
Right. Yeah, I think it didn't. I think maybe the problem with that was it explains how it works mechanically. But I think what Erica, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're more interested. You just want to see like a real example.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
doing this JS tiny test that is part of the testing series, like I've understood all the testing up until it wants us to use bind, and I don't know why I would use bind. That's my problem. Like, I get how to use it and how to implement it, but why would I do that?
Mm-hmm. Let me see if it's in here. Okay. I don't have a completed version. Switch. No. So if we look at the, I guess I'll just go to the one that doesn't have for each yet. The name of it was Sunset. Yeah. So in client.js. So remember, we took out this for loop. Can you see the for loop I'm highlighting now?
Yes.
So remember we took out this for loop and we replaced it with the for each?
Yes.
And then what we did is we wanted to do stuff like where is it? Huh. Wait, let me pull up. I actually can't remember what it was. Oh, okay, I see it. All right, let me share my other screen. Yeah, can you see that? So here's an example where you want to override this. So in the callback function passed to for each, this is just equal to the window, but we wanted this to equal the to-do list object. So we overrode the behavior and passed in this as the second argument to for each.
Yeah, I
So,
remember that.
yeah, so that's one example where it's happening internally. And so you might, like, that's just an example where you do override the this value, not yourself, but that's one example. And then another example would be from, if you grab the one from to-do MVC jQuery. Do you remember all this stuff?
Yes.
So what's happening here? You should be able to kind of derive the reason that this is being used.
So this was kind of like a create event listener, right? Where on key up, this dot create binds to this.
And what is this equal to?
That should equal the new to do.
No. So how would we find out what this is equal to?
I would do like breakpoints maybe and see how it runs.
Yeah. So I think so if you're looking for another example, here's another really good example. And so to figure out why we're doing this, remove it. So instead of having bind, just delete this part, and then run the code. And if we don't need it, then the app should still work. If the code doesn't work, it means it broke. And then try to reverse engineer and figure out why it broke. And then you'll see the little difference that's happening.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. And then maybe do it right now, and then once we go off the air, if you
That's a good challenge. Yeah, I'll do that.
you can work on. Does that make
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, let me get back to this. Okay, 1 second. Let me get my windows cleared. All right, let's do Vincent next. Vincent, are you there?
Oh yeah, but yeah. A bind is interesting. I think it just takes some time to like think about. Usually. So
yeah, I mean because mechanically, like in the cheat sheet, that's it. There's like nothing else that it can really do, and so I think a classic thing that students do is they try to think about like what are all the scenarios where I would need to use something like bind, and it's a lot more general than that. Like I think a lot of times you can't really think of, like personally, I don't have in mind set of 6 ways that I will use bind. It's more like when you need to whenever you need to override the default behavior, you might use it, right? So
Can you take
it's
a
just a
quick look
very
at the? Oh,
it's a very
sorry.
general thing. It's not like
Can you
5
take
things.
a?
It's much more expensive.
Yeah. Can you take a quick look at the screenshot that I sent you and go over quickly why we used bind in the new router?
Okay. So let me pull up UCJ query. Did I explain it in the video?
Yeah, but
What did I say? Like generally.
in the video, I remember you just saying that it's similar to why we use bind in bind events, and talking about we wanted to bind this to the apt object rather than having it stay connected to new router.
Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So Vincent's asking about right here. This line is pretty confusing, I think. The first thing I'd want to figure out is like what happens here. Let's just add a breakpoint and then see what we got. So we're in a init right now. And then so this matches up with this. And then this matches up with this. Yeah, there's like too much chaining for my taste. Yeah, so this is kind of hard to read. So first, router is being passed in an argument, which is an object, and the object starts from here and goes all the way to here.
Mm-hmm.
And that object has a method, one method. The first one is called filter. The first and only one is called filter. And then that function
I remember in the video you said we bind router to this, so that when we do this dot filter or this dot render, it's not calling it on new router, rather it's calling it on app, right?
Yeah, this syntax is just super weird.
Yeah.
Let's play around with it because I'm honestly not super comfortable with it right now. But yeah, I mean that is why you would do it, right? Because this dot filter, I don't know what the default is because it probably depends on Director.js what they do. They may or may not have overridden this, but whatever they made it, we want it to be different, so that's why we're using bind.
Okay.
But so that answers this question.
Yeah.
But what's much more interesting is to really confusing syntax that I would probably want to play around with. So here we have a test object. Well, first of all, I would never suggest that you use this syntax, but it can still be helpful to kind of dissect things. So let's say that we have a test object, and I'm trying to replicate what we have in in the code. So I'm just trying to like have something that looks kind of similar. So if we really distill this into a simple example, we have our test object, which is equivalent to the object that's passed into router. All right. We have a method that is a substitute for this filter method.
Mhm.
And then we have the method definition, which ends right here, right? So that's where we're at right now. So the line right here is equivalent to this closing curly bracket, curly brace. And then we called bind on it. We passed in an object. Make sense?
Yeah.
So let's hold that. So the way you want to experiment with this is look at it in kind of look at it without bind, kind of exactly what I told Erica to do. So we can just return this, right? So we do test object dot method. Now, what's gonna happen?
Just return the test object. Right.
Yep. And then if we let's rewrite the test object and modify it so that it follows the really weird behavior, and let's bind it to instant. Syntax error. Oh, you can't have, my bad. So okay.
Okay.
And now if we do test object method, what do we get now?
It should just be object Vincent, right?
Yep. So that's what's happening here. It's
Okay.
just don't write code like this. It's so
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like bind isn't too bad. It's just figuring out when to use it, especially
Yep.
for writing our own code.
Right. And then when you use it, just be aware that it can be confusing. So don't try to squash everything into one line. It's okay. It's okay to create a separate variable so that people can see what's happening with a glance, rather than having to test everything out.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, cool. I had a couple other questions if everyone's good on bind.
Yeah, go for it.
So I just finished the To Do MVC series that we're talking about right now. And I was wondering, I kind of want to mess around with the files on my laptop and not on Glitch. And I was wondering, do you cover Express and server.js in later series, or should we just learn that by ourselves?
Wait, so for people watching the broadcast, I wasn't sharing my screen, so sorry about that. But the code I was just talking about is on my screen right now. So if you look at it now, you have everything. I didn't type anything that you can't see right now, so sorry about that. So your question, Vincent, is about you want to play around with it on your own computer?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's pretty easy to do that. Just download the project and then open it up. You can just open up the file. So more specifically, if you go to MVC jQuery, you don't need to learn anything to do this.
I did that, but it didn't work for me because isn't the program running on Express?
You know what? And I did that also when I had done the To Do MVC. It doesn't fully work on your computer because I did this exact same thing. I didn't want to use Glitch or Plunk or whatever, and I had done it all on my computer. But there were parts of the program that does not appear on your computer, and I forgot which part, like parts of the to-do list or something. There's definitely things that were missing because I remember that as well.
No, let's hold on for a second. So nothing that matters is missing, and so I can prove it to you.
Yeah, it was definitely more, I think, of probably the creative aspect. There just were components, but anything we did in terms of adding lists and things like that, for the most part, worked. But there were a couple of times that I remember running into some issues with some stuff as well. It was so
Yeah,
long ago, I don't remember
Yeah,
what it was.
so really there shouldn't be any issues. If you download the project and open this index HTML, it'll work. And I can show you. So I'm just in Chrome, right? So I'm going to open, I just did open file, and I'll just share my whole desktop. Entire screen. So it should look crazy right now. All right, so if you just go to MVC master examples, jQuery, and then you can open with Chrome if that's not your default, and then it'll open up the file and maybe Vincent.
Okay, so it does work. All right.
Yeah, it does work. I assure you, it works.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it that way then, because then I did a Git repo through Glitch, and then I think like certain files are in like the views folder and stuff. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, so it has a folder structure that you expect, because it's going to be relative from the file where you have index.html. So you're going to have access to the JavaScript and
You know what? Now that he just said that, I almost think I may have downloaded it from GitHub and not from to do MVC. Because as soon as he said that, I remember running into a couple of issues with it as well. But maybe I didn't download
well,
it.
I downloaded it from GitHub as well. It's like
Oh.
this. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's
Yeah,
been a
so-
while since I used it, but
Yeah, so if you're having trouble, just recreate the steps I just did. Just hit clone or download, and then open the file. So mine is in the downloads folder, and then /exa. The main
Okay, cool.
project examples jQuery index.html. Yep.
On that note, though, do you recommend us kind of going to Express and things like that and learning that, or just focus more on tutorial stuff?
Focus on the stuff in front of you. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Because I have another question, but I don't want to take up all the time.
Sure, go for it. Yes. So Vincent, in general, like they're gonna have a lot of things that are gonna distract you. Expresses could be, might as well be a variable name X. I think if you stick with the stuff you're doing now, you're gonna get better rapidly, and so it's gonna be the best use of your time. So if you do other stuff right now, I think you're slowing yourself down. Once you finish everything, then you can start. I think that would be a good time to look at other things if you have a reason to. But the way you're asking to use Express now doesn't seem like there's any point, right? So when you do consider learning X, do it for a reason. Don't do it because a blog post said it was cool.
Yeah, because I actually just
unless you have a shitload of free time, right? So like,
yeah.
Your time is valuable. Don't just go through a laundry list of crap someone put in a blog post.
Yeah, I was thinking about just starting React too, just because I read that blog post that I think. But after watching your underscore video, now I'm kind of rethinking my structure a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I'm not against learning new things, but don't, this quickly turns into every single week you're like spouting some new philosophy and
Okay.
kind of not getting better at programming. So
Okay.
don't fall into that trap. You have to be kind of disciplined with learning new stuff. All right, Vincent, any other questions?
No, not at the moment. Thanks.
Okay. Yep, you're welcome. Let's go with Tarek. Is that how you say your name? Are you there, Tarek? All right. Well, Tarek, if you come back, let me know. We'll get to you. Let's move to. I know Sherry didn't have any questions. Oh, mic issue. All right. Well, Tarek, if you can, then just type out your question in the chat where you just said you had a mic issue, and I'll take a look at that and I'll answer it once I see your typing pop up. In the meantime, I'll go to John.
I don't have any questions today.
Okay. Where are you at with this stuff right now?
I'm reprogramming to do MVC from scratch, and I'm almost done. Just have to do templating and touch it up with some better CSS.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I'll move on to testing.
How has that been? Has it?
It's been pretty good. I discovered that the only way I could figure out how to do it was to write like a really long append method for the to-do list for each to-do item. So I have like a super long like string of HTML like written into the JavaScript because I didn't implement templating until I'm gonna do it at the end.
So you did it like kind of practical JavaScript style.
Yeah, I kind of just added one feature at a time, and it ended up pretty messy. But I've gone back and like touched a little bit up here and there. But it's turning out pretty good so far. There's some like rogue methods that I had to create just to like access some weird stuff because I can use like templating or a more organized structure in the HTML than I probably could have if I was better at it. But yeah, it'll be interesting when I finish and then I can compare code to do MVC jQuery.
Cool, sounds good. All right,
yeah, I was kind of just itching to write some code before moving on.
Yeah, that makes sense. It can be good practice. Cool. Well, if you do have a question, just let me know. Last person, Jason, did you have a question?
I don't. Just listening in.
Okay, cool. So I guess that's it. Tarek, did you have a question? Were you gonna type it?
Sorry, I have another question.
Okay.
I noticed in the to-do list app, to-do MVC, why do we use a server for that? It looks like an app that can be done without using Express.
Where do you see this? There's no server being used. It's literally just a JavaScript file.
Do you mean like Node? The Node modules folder?
There's like a server.js in Glitch that I see. And using like
So that's to serve the to-do-mvc.com website, I think. Right. So like for example, they want to serve a fab icon. That's like to actually serve the.
Oh,
the
I got you. Okay, to serve
it's
the.
not. Yes.
Yeah,
so this is the code for to-do-mvc.com. And so you can see like there's index HTML here too. That is the landing page, I think. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, just focus on the jQuery part.
That makes sense.
You're looking at stuff that's not. Yeah, that's relevant to the entire to-do-MVC project, not any given example.
Okay, I thought it was part of the app or something like that.
No, it's not. Yeah, you want to stick with the examples. I didn't look at the larger structure because it's not relevant. So, even if I wouldn't be able to answer questions about it anyway because it's really just not relevant to the project.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Might just end a little early today. Anyone?
I have another question. If
Okay.
yeah. I'm just interested in kind of like your learning process. I know you talked a little bit about it in your videos, but just can you talk about like kind of more about like the mistakes you made and why you kind of like learning the fundamentals of JavaScript more so than kind of like, you know, learning frameworks first and things like that? If that makes sense?
Yeah, sure. So this is kind of a pretty general question. So if I talk about something that you want me to go deeper into, let me know. Or if you want to redirect the conversation, let me know. But I think
I think in general we're just all interested in like your learning process and
yeah. So the learning process is very much like the code reading process. It depends on how much I need to know. And if I don't need to know something very well, I don't learn it very well. It's it's um and I say that's like my code reading process because in reading code, if you look at the process that I teach and kind of the premium section, if I don't need to know it, I don't even look at it. I just very aggressively ignore stuff. And my learning process is very similar. So for example, the stuff the way we're learning right now is a very deep, thorough way of looking at things, like line by line, very like looking at all the minutia. And you don't need to do that all the time. So um, even within like one or two, like even within the same application, like on one line you may not need to do any look at it at all, and then on another line you need to look at it really deeply. Um, and so it is very much like reading code. So for example, Vincent, the way I kind of didn't go too deep into Director.js in to do MVC jQuery is kind of an example of like I kind of need to know it just to understand this one method call, and I put together a little demo, but I don't really want to read the source code for the router because I don't think I need to understand this code base. Does that make sense? So it's a it's very much learn only when it makes sense and ignore all the time, pretty much. Um, so for example, when you're learning, when you're working on something, for example, it makes sense to learn the things you use pretty well, because if you're working on a application that's going to be around for a couple of years, you're going to be using that for, probably a couple of years, maybe even a decade or something. And so in that case, I'd probably learn it really well. If I was hired as a consultant to look at someone's stuff, I'd probably do the bare minimum I need and like try to learn as little as possible so that I don't have to spend time on it. But then, if I had that person as a client, a long-term client, it might pay off for me to learn the stuff better so that I can be quicker because I'm gonna have to look at it again, right? So I don't spend much time at all on things I don't look at repeatedly because there's no incentive to do that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think that view is interesting because the view of a lot of beginners, I think, is like there are all these 10 things I need to know, and then I'm gonna do all of them because they came up in a essential blog post, and that's why I say like you only learn it if you need to. Like there are people that have made careers out of front-end development and they don't know how Express works, right? But they're like really good programmers, and like you don't have to know everything to be good at programming, right?
Okay.
So um, yeah, I think like I wonder what kind of programmer I would be if every month I learned something new. I don't think I'd be as good. I think I'd be like very beginner at a lot of things. Which, what else would I be if I did that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep.
So would you start off in the beginning, and when did you kind of have this aha moment?
I think it was the first time when I was working when I was working at Google and we were doing Angular stuff. I just had to use it every day, and so I had to learn it really well. And that was an interesting time because it was pretty early in Angular's like in the earlier period of a framework. There's usually not that much documentation, or it's not done very well. There aren't many tutorials available, and so if you're going to work on something early, you just have to figure out how to learn things on your own. And so you just have to like do more things, like kind of watch video. Like the creators of the framework might have given talks, and you just want to like kind of know what their mindset is. That could help you understand stuff.
Yeah.
Or you want to read the source code because it's the only way to figure out how something works. Like, so you just are forced to do things that you don't really need to do with a really mature, like something that's super mature, where you Google everything and you get an answer. If you Google everything and you don't get an answer, then you just have to like get around that. So I think that's probably what made me learn how to learn things, right? Because like when there aren't tutorials, you have to read the documentation, you have to read the source code when the documentation doesn't make sense. There aren't many other places to go. And then you have to test everything. So or experiment with everything. So like one thing I've been trying to do in my teaching more is when someone doesn't know what happens, or they're asking like why this is done a certain way, like with Erica, when she was asking like why would I use this or bind this, I told her a good experiment, really it's an experiment to do, would be to run to do MVC, jQuery, remove bind, look at what happens, add it back in, look at what happens, note the difference, and then you'll know the answer, right? So a lot of doing stuff like that to figure out how things work, especially when the documentation like doesn't make sense, or is really poorly written, or is missing. So yeah, that's probably that probably made me like go do uncomfortable things, and probably had a lot of influence on like the way I do things now and the way I teach, because the way I teach is really the same. It's very similar. It's hard to like separate them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is interesting is that what happened to me was maybe a good accident, because even if you do something really very mature, like for example, JavaScript today is really mature. Well, not really mature, but relatively. Back when I was, I mean, like JavaScript 8 years ago was very different, right? So like imagine JavaScript 8 years ago versus today. It's a whole lot better, and there's a whole lot more resources and stuff that help you explain things. It's like a blog post for everything, right? And so even if you are doing something that has a lot of resources, what you'll find though is that it's still often not that helpful, because the level or the depth that most things will go into is still very shallow. And so you still need to like, it kind of just delays you from doing what you should do anyway, which is like learn how to really figure things out, right? So I think a really nice ecosystem it's nice to have, obviously better than not having it, but it babies you for a moment, and you have to realize that you can't like only every single time you need something hope that there's a blog post that explains it, because maybe there's not. And then like at at the beginning of an ecosystem, there's no blog post ever, and so you just learn how to, you almost learn how to be the author of that blog post, like if you wanted to, right? But when the blog post is there, like it is right now today in JavaScript, I think people get dependent on it, and they never really learn how to. They never they never really learn how to troubleshoot. So, yeah, I think a lot of people are a little bit spoiled in that respect by the ecosystem, and then it just slows down their development, I think.
Okay. And I have another question I think a lot of us would be pretty interested in hearing the answer to. When do we know when we're ready to apply for jobs, or when we're job ready?
It really it depends on the person that's trying to hire you. Some people have very low standards, so maybe you maybe already be way overqualified for some things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't say, like, you really just have to apply for things and see. But I think that, like, there are things that I encourage people to do. Is one thing is to contribute to open source, because it sets kind of a bar for quality. Like, you at least have someone now, you at least have to conform to the standards of an existing project, and like if there are tests, you can't add code that makes the test fail, and you typically will have someone review your code, right? So there are a lot of things there that are in the process that are really good for you, and I think can help instill confidence, and also not just instill confidence in you, but be a really great signal to other people that you know your stuff, right? So I always think those things are the most kind of the highest, the best signals of competence. And so if I were an employer, I'd look for stuff like that, or as close as you can get to that kind of thing. So, for example, something that's not a good signal is the person didn't do anything, right? Has no experience and didn't do anything. Because I think in programming you can do a lot of things to show what you know. So the absence of that is very troubling and shows me that you can't really figure things out. The next step up people usually do is they have a really modest portfolio of tutorial apps from tutorials, and that's also not that impressive because everyone has that and has done those things, but it's better than nothing. So the next tier is like people that have done things that are clearly required thought and input, and like they had to make it work and kind of put something together, and maybe it solves a problem that they have, and they actually have people that use their application. That's a pretty good signal, better than a portfolio of tutorial applications. And then the best signal is open source contributions.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's even a better signal than work experience, most work experience, because most work experience is like very much like they're trying to it's not the most, sometimes not the most honest, or they're trying to like say they did more than they actually did, and I'm like very skeptical of that. You can't fake your open source contributions. So yeah, and even if you did do something very impressive sounding like at some company, I can't see what you actually did. I don't know if you said you helped with this, like if you just were in a meeting but didn't really do anything, like and then there are also things that prevent you from talking about it, like you might have signed you probably signed an NDA with your company. You can't actually tell me like specific things, and then it becomes hard to really understand what you did. With open source, I don't have that problem. So employers, I think, really like that.
Okay.
So I think that the higher you can be on that scale, you don't have to be at the very end, the top, but the closer you can be to the top, the better, right? The closer you're to the bottom, not as good. So strive to be more on the top right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I feel like once we're done with your tutorials, we're pretty much equipped to start contributing or like being able to work on open source projects. So
yeah, I
like,
mean,
that's a goal.
several of the students at Watch and Code have contributed to the Accounting.js project, so it's not theoretical. People have done it.
Okay, nice.
All right, so Tariq asked some questions in the chat. I'll repeat them out. Okay, so Tariq asked, what is the best way to find open source projects to work on? So you want to, this is kind of related to Vincent's question about how I learned things. Deciding to contribute to an open source project is very much deciding to learn that code base. And so you want to learn things that you are probably going to use, or there's like incentive for you to know about, right? So the most direct, so things that are most directly useful to you are things that you would use. So say that you have your own project and you end up using this open source project in your project. That could be a good candidate because knowing how it works actually makes you know how your own application works more deeply. And if that's an application you want to work on over a long period of time, then understanding, projects that you depend on in your project can be something that you actually care about. So that's the best way, I think. And if you compare that with the other case, like if you just pick some random thing that you're never going to look at in your life, as soon as you stop working on that open source project or you stop looking at the code, nothing's going to pull you back to it. Nothing's going to make you care about it. And so you probably won't care about it. So, do things that will make sense, I guess, is try to find things that make sense to work on. Don't try to find things just because they exist. I think that's okay. You can do that, but it's not ideal. So if you can find something that you use, it's always better, all else equal, to do that. But there might be other exceptions where there's something that's just really makes sense to work on just because maybe the person wants to help you out and they want to kind of guide you through a contribution and kind of teach you some stuff, and maybe you feel like there's something you could really learn from the project that makes it different. Then maybe you could do that. But all else equal, you want to do things that you will care about over a long period of time. All right. Yeah. Anyone else have a question? So we're at time right now. So I'll do a last call for a question on the Hangout, and then we'll end the broadcast. Vincent, another one lined up?
Oh no, that's it for today. Thanks, though. Appreciate your answer.
Yep. John, anything?
No, I'm just struggling with CSS. The layout stuff is annoying.
It is, yes. Jason had a question. Jason, you said, am I in New York? No, I'm in Portland, Oregon. Just for fun.
I knew it. I knew you weren't home.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like those are all the questions. Let me do a really quick check and see if anyone asked anything in the YouTube live stream. Or let me check Facebook. Nope, looks like everything has been answered. All right, then. Well, I'll end the broadcast right now. So a lot of you know that typically after each broadcast, I'll do a really quick casual chat. Today will be short. It'll be about 20 minutes because then I have to head out. And so if you want to join that, you'll have to join the Hangout, and the Hangout link is in the document in the YouTube description if you are watching the live stream right now. So that's it then. I'm going to end the broadcast for now, and then hope to see you next week at the same time. Yeah, everyone, and thank you for joining.